All right, welcome everybody. Welcome. The first show of 2024. Happy New Year to you guys. Hope you guys have had a great New Year. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, 2, 3, 4. Today's the 5th. Hopefully this has been a really good 2024 so far for you. Man, oh man, it's been a couple of days. I have not been on here live. So I completely have forgotten how to do one of these shows. Forgive me. Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. This is episode 147. And tonight, my guest, the very first guest of the year, is Mr. Adam LAWSON. And we're going to be talking about graphic design in comic books, lettering, logos, page layout, all that good stuff. Adam was supposed to be on here, I don't even know when. I forget. November, December? I have no idea. I completely... Even when he came on, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This is like a rescheduling of a show. So many things have happened, but I'm so glad to have him on here tonight. It's going to be a really good show. Thank you guys for joining us as well. So speaking of you guys in the chat, before we bring Adam on, let's say hello to those of you that are here. We got Eric the Guapo here. Said it is me that is first. No one else. He's correct, at least from what I could see. No one else left a comment other than Eric. Thank you, Eric. Cole King, what's up, Cole? Hope you're doing well. Happy New Year to you. Ben Spar, what's up, Ben? Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Buddha Bear, how's it going? What's up, Brian Suddenly Old? Hope you're doing good. We see Dr. Mask here, too. How's it going, Doc? Let's see. It says packing up Christmas decorations and listening. Man, I don't think we've packed up Christmas decorations here completely in like 4 years. Maybe like 80% of them. And even then, I'm like, why? Let's leave them up. They're fun. But then there's other days that come along, other events, other holidays, You got to take them down at that point in time. But I think our Christmas stuff mostly stays up till sometime around February or so. And then things slowly start to shift and nothing really completely takes hold until maybe around the summer. But yeah, hope you're having a good Christmas decorating packing day. Thank you, Doc. Anchorite's Cat. What's up, Anchorite? Thank you for being here tonight. We got Wayne in the chat as well. What's up, Wayne? Hope you're doing well. We also have Manny Cornejo here. How's it going, Manny? Thank you for being here. Hope you're doing good. We got Hex Allen here as well. What's up, Hex? And Hex, you'll be on what? Next week? Is that correct? Let me look at the calendar here. Yes, you will. Next week. Next Tuesday. Jefferson Roswell here, too. What's up? It says Grag Pick. Is that a thing? Oh, graphic. That's a thing. Hey, Jefferson. Thank you for being here tonight. Shrek PMC. How's it going, Shrek? What's up? Kel Razor. How's it going, Kel Razor? Cigar Gangster here, too. How's it going, Cigar Gangster? Thank you for joining us tonight. Dr. Mass says Mick Foley has a Christmas room in his house. Yeah, that dude loves. I mean, he visits Santa's Village, which is up in New Hampshire here. I think he almost practically saved the place. Loves the place. So he digs Christmas a lot. The Anchorite's Cat says, I ate too much ice cream. I guess I'm sorry to hear that. Hang in there. It'll be okay. All right, so without further ado, let's bring him on, the man of the hour. He's going to be talking with us about graphic design and all that good stuff tonight. He was on the show before. He's back again. Give him a big Comic Book Radio welcome, Mr. Adam LAWSON. What's up, Adam?
Boom. Peter, it's good to be back, dude. I love talking comics so much. I produce TV for a living, and particularly since I had children television commercials. I was the guy who made that Tubi spot for the Super Bowl last year where we took over the show. But it's funny because I make those for a living, working in an artistic field. But really, this is what I want to be talking about, right? Like,
Nice.
I'm
Yeah,
like, I can't wait to stop talking about the next Coors Light ad and really start talking about what came out from Image this week.
Well, that works out because I don't want to hear about the next Coors Light ad. So
Okay, good. Good. Because I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it. But no, and I also love this side of it, because, one of the cool things that's been rad about my work in television and commercials is so much of it is graphic design heavy, right? There's so much design work. When I pitch for a commercial, my director and I, it's not just like we come in the room and say, hey, here's our idea. You spend $5,000-6,000 building a deck, doing artistic pages, building and designing every sort of nuance of it. And you consider also too, like the ad agency, when they come to the table, they've spent $250,000 in design to get it there, right? So I'm really grateful for that time and being in a culture that really thinks about the nuance of design. And I think that it's been really helpful for me when I started shifting into lettering all my own books, right? And to thinking about design for comics as well. Like how can you make striking images? And one of the fun parts is like when I'm doing a commercial for Blue Moon beer, like I just recently did, it has to be, they spend a good deal of money like cleaning up every frame, cleaning out any imperfection, and making it as kind of as sterile as possible because they're not in a negative way. They're just trying to represent a product that they don't want it to be misrepresented, et cetera, et cetera. But with a comic, because it only has to live as art, you can have things with some grit, right? You can have textures and you can make choices. That wouldn't be available in the commercial world.
So you mentioned that you letter all your own comics. Has that always been the case?
Since the 8th, my first one, my artist was initially doing it for the first couple issues on the 8th, and he's like, Adam, I'm so swamped. And I'm like, well, let me take over this thing. I can learn this. And so I taught myself Clip Studio. That's what he was drawing in, and so it was kind of the easy handoff. And now I love Clip Studio, and it's like a second language for me. And I said, listen, because I'm constantly having to learn new software all the time. I own a post-production company too. So I'm always, the Adobe world and other. I'm living in that. And so I thought I can teach myself this. And really it's a way that I make commercials, but I don't touch anything, right? I'm not holding the camera. I'm not the actor saying the line. I'm not any of those things. But here's my book, The Exile, that I did with Wesley Snipes. That's me. I did that with my hands, right? And not that it was amazing and not that it's, game changing, but all these balloons and letters I put in by hand. And for me, that part of the other side of writing, the fact that you now have to make that writing not just live as words in a book, but it has to be visual. I think it's the other half of being a comic book writer, at least for myself. And in telling the story and in making it land. And so it's been exciting to one, just on a personal passion to put your fingerprint on it. And then also to craft your story even a little more, right? You can make choices as a writer letterer, Pete, you do too, right? You can make choices that a normal letterer can't. You can omit words. You can change a line. You can say, oh, you know what, actually, with the way this is shaping up, I've got this idea for this balloon. Let me change that word. You can make choices they can't get away with. So in a way, it's really free, right, to operate in that world.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because when I am writing the comic and sending off the script, I'm not really putting down dialogue too much in there anyway. It may be just to give a gist of the character, what they would say.
Sure.
But I know how the scene's going to play out. So it's more about directing the scene, the flow of the story and that kind of thing to the artist and not having them get bogged down in a lot of the dialogue and whatnot afterwards. So then when I get the art back and I'm going to do the lettering, I've got 3 hats on at that point in time. I'm writer, letterer, and editor.
Yeah.
So it's not just I'm then copy pasting from a script or whatever. Now I know what's going to be there. I know how the characters are going to respond and how everything's going to play out. But a lot of the time, I'll get back the art, and it'll inspire me to come up with another way to approach it, or put something in there that at the time when I conceived of the scene, I didn't really think that I would have put it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun for me. I can't. I mean, I know there's a lot of people. If anything, it's very. I think it's the vast majority of writers that then hand off their script and then they don't letter their stuff. But I personally can't picture doing that.
I know. I'm with you too. I to be honest, I think it's a curse of lots of writers in general that they like don't want to touch things in the sense of like being responsible for the physicality of something, right? Like, hey, you got to letter it, which means there's technical knowledge required from you, right? Like, you got to pull this file into Clip or to Illustrator or Photoshop, wherever you're doing it, and you got to build the page to the right specs, right? You got to work in the right DPI, you got to work in the right color space, right? You have to make. You can make decision. You can make choices that somehow screw it up, and I think they're missing out. I think they're missing out because I think that there is something unique about that relationship. Do you know that comic book Chew? Did you ever read that book? It was on Image.
I know of it. Yeah, I know of it.
That was the guy who inspired me to do it. The writer on that book, he was writing and lettering his book. It was just him and the artist doing everything, right? I got thinking, I'm like, wow, that's the way to make it. And then also, too, as a writer, you're also just physically contributing more hours. So you also understand, I think, the artist's commitment, too, as well, right? Because you know what it's like to deal
somewhat,
with the
I would
pages.
say. Yeah. I don't want us to toot our horn too much.
No. Let's not confuse that. Let's not confuse that the hours commitment is the same. Let's not confuse that. I agree. That can never be confused at what artists are contributing versus
what I think is great about
letters.
the lettering in general, whether you letter your own stuff or not, whether you're doing any graphic design elements or not, that's a chance to have the visual voice represented of the writing, of the story elements, of the design.
Yep.
And I think that's the part that is appealing to me. And maybe it's not appealing to others, or maybe it is appealing to them, but time doesn't really permit, or learning the technical kind of stuff doesn't permit, or maybe they feel like their know-how, they'll leave it to the professional, because that's how I feel when it comes to illustrating the book and doing the sequentials. People go, oh, Pete, you could draw it, you could do whatever, and I'm like, doing a sketch card or a cover or a pinup or whatever is very different from doing the book sequentially.
Yep.
And it's not something that I feel passionate about, and nor is it something that I feel like I want to go down that road, when I'd much rather work with someone else and someone who's way more adept at it than me. Yeah. And it's fun then for me to go back and forth and kind of help sculpt this thing with the artist at that point, as opposed to taking it all on and then doing it myself and going in there. I'd rather play editor over all of the book and the art and things like that. Yeah. So I don't know what it may be, why some writers don't do their own lettering, but I recommend this for everybody with everything when it comes to making your comic, especially when you're going to work with other people too. Try to at least dabble.
Yeah.
So you have a working knowledge somewhat.
Yep.
Of what is going on here, perhaps. Learn as much as you can about as many aspects of what you're going to get involved in and what you're going to have other people get involved in. I think, if anything, that's going to really help a lot when it comes to getting your book done. But the graphic design part of it, right? I mean, you're great with that as well, and you do all the graphic design too, right? With the book and the
That's right. Yeah. Now I take that back. With The Exiled, Antoine Dennison built that title for me. On that book, I had him do that. It was funny because I was putting something together, and he hit me up and was like, Adam, I have this other idea for it, and he sent me that, and I said, okay, let's go with yours instead of mine.
Yeah.
But in general, that's the case. And I lay out all the pages. I built it, and so my process is I write the script in Word, and it starts actually in a notebook, right? I do all my outlining by hand on pen and paper because I feel like it's the cleanest way. When you can go to a cafe and you don't need a computer or a phone to create, at least for me, it frees you because your brain isn't then like fighting the app, right? And it's like you can just be clean. And so it starts there. It goes to the Word document. It goes to the artist, right? And then it comes back to me, and I put it into Clip Studio, and I just do. There's also just some technical cleanup that you sometimes do, especially like Jason Krager right now on my book that's coming out here, Jawbone Death. He's working traditionally, right? So there's always some stuff that you got to kind of futz just to technically get it into your frame, and then sometimes there's also just like some cleaning up, maybe of some leftover pencils or some things I'll do in Clip Studio, and then I'll letter the book, and then I put it out to InDesign, where I do the final layout for it. And then depending on what the work is, I'll flip between Clip Studio and Photoshop for building out like interior cover pages, any sort of layouts, titling, credits, etc., and how to do that. And then I'll build that all out in InDesign so that I can then ship from InDesign to PDF to the printer, which also then that's another level of it, right? Because then it's the pre-press side.
Yeah.
And that there was some fumbling along the way in the beginning of that for me, but now I know much better. And when I can look at a page and see it and be like, the black's over there. Let me throw it in. Let me check these black depths, so I don't get screwed. Because
if you don't do that sometime, if you're not checking your CMYK on separate plate levels, you might notice that, wow, okay, that's really messed up. There's like a patch here, a patch there. That color separation's weird.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you notice like the biggest killer is when I was doing Kids and Monsters in black and white, Maxie did it traditionally, right? And then the scan came in, and I needed to actually go back in to the CMYK. Michael Bancroft helped me out with it because I just needed because the blacks ended up really milky, a lot of gray in them, a lot of whites still left in it, that I need to go back in page by page and clean them up, and they just needed some work just because that's the magic of traditional stuff is that like the colors are not as specific, right? I prefer to get it, but it also means there's a little bit more cleanup on the backside, for print. But it's really it's thinking through that whole process, and I feel like that's, at least for myself, that's part of the passion of making a comic, right? It's so handmade.
Well, I think that's something that is unfortunately overlooked by a lot of people that are going into making their comic, is the graphic design elements part of it.
Yep.
Even stuff like the font on lettering choices.
Totally.
I find people it's something that it's difficult to first get someone who's not aware of it to become aware of it.
Yep.
But it's like once you have them see the Matrix, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, it all makes sense. That doesn't go with that. That doesn't feel like that. That's not right, But at first people are like, oh, what does the font matter? I'll just put this, put that, thing. Comic Sans, why it says comic in the thing. I don't want to do Comic Sans.
No.
And it's all that. And then until you start really breaking down that visual representation of what you're trying to convey, getting them to understand the emotion, the impact of what the font can do for their lettering, for their title, for all that kind of stuff, the design on that level. And it's a very basic thing. There's so much more to graphic design than just like font choice.
Here's the thing.
It's a huge part of it.
I just did a campaign for Google for their new AI system. I did a commercial. My Post House did it. And think about this. It's 2 30-second spots of talking heads intermingled with graphics, right? And they spent, Google spent, I spent about 200. So it's like maybe a little over $500,000, right? And one of the things that
Would you spend $500,000 on, Adam?
a 30
Just-
a 30-second commercial,
Okay, I was gonna
for
say.
Google. And I didn't spend it, Google spent it, right? But between the live side and the post side, and like the font thing, if you think fonting like in the real game is like a lot, not much time is spent on it, you're out of your mind.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
can easily spend more money and time nuancing font choice, futzing with kerning, than you can like building something in 3D, because of how much it impacts what you're doing.
Yeah, it's going to be everywhere. I mean, that's the thing. It's like the same thing in comics with the lettering. People go, "Oh, the art has to be great," and yes, it does. It absolutely does have to be great. But
Absolutely.
people that are going to read your book, they're going to spend an awful lot of time looking at that font, looking at the lettering.
So much time, and in fact, the lettering, for good or for evil, leads you through the page. So here's the page from Jawbone Death that I had lettered, right? And so, because the way you get through a page is you go to caption to caption to caption, kind of leads you through it, right? Now this is a high action page, right, where there's no dialogue to it, but you can see like this theme in the background, right? So like I built that, right, and then I rotoed the art and slipped it back behind there, right? And I wanted this moment over here. He says, "I ain't done yet," right? It's this pivotal moment. I'm like, and I just do that by hand, right? Without a font, and then the same thing with the scream at the bottom, because I wanted it to feel kind of raw and imperfect, right? That can only kind of come with hand drawing something. And I think that there's a lot of that building process, like this smash, you know what I mean? It's like multiple layers of building the font.
Now, when you say you're hand drawing it, I'm guessing you mean you're digitally drawing it with
Yeah.
like a. Okay.
Yeah. So this is my world. It's the iPad with the stylus, right? So the iPad stylus, and then a separated keyboard, so I have hotkeys, so you can actually move fast, right? And that's kind of the world. So I'll pull the dialogue out from Word, copy and paste it, put it into Clip Studio, right? Like maybe here's a page with some dialogue, right? I'll copy and paste it into Clip Studio, and then you can see like you build different balloons a different way, right? So like this panel here, like this line, is the rest of the font. Hometown Hero is the font at 7.5 pixel, right? Whereas this, used the same fonting, put it bold, but made it bigger to make it have more meaning. And, slip the vroom behind him. I like that feeling of slipping a sound effect behind someone.
Oh yeah.
And then these ones, like these balloons here, you can see this worm-like creature. It's the queen of this evil monster he's after. Like that's all. That balloon is just hand drawn, right? And and I mean hand, I mean on the iPad, right? With a totally different font, with a rip snort font, right? Because it's like she's not gonna sound like him, right? If he's considered like the normal human voice because he's a regular guy, there's no way this monster sounds like that, right?
Yeah.
And so, because this book's dealing in black and white in its delivery, you've only got kind of the two colors to work with. Was like, how could I make this feel like it would, like you would hear it? It starts to become the question, right, Peter? And so it's like, and then this helmet he has in the story. There's this ancient warrior, the Leviathan warrior, and he's become this guy's avatar. And when he puts on the helmet, he can hear him talk to him. And that's his voice here, right? See the thought balloon, it needs a little, it's not done yet, but it needs a little striation here on the edges to help tell you that it's not connected to a person. In panel, it's a thought, or it's not. It's coming from somebody almost in voiceover, but it's not a. So it needed little striations I'll put here on the edges. But I hand drew his balloon as well. Flipped it to Man Eater is the name of this font, right? To give this sound to this warrior. And then there's also just like his dialogue, when you bold something, right? To help make it easier to read, understand the emphasis of this person. And then there's tucking these things in, rotoing, workout, slipping in your lettering here, like in this leap, so that it feels embedded, at least for me, and this feel of this book, because it's quite gnarly and there's all this sort of spray, black spray that Jason does. Like the lettering shouldn't feel tacked on. I don't feel like with this kind of book. It should feel just as kind of as grimy and as handmade as the page. So I'm always trying to like layer it behind things. This is the choice that I feel like these words start to sound like the people you see in the page.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people who don't understand when they're creating their comic that the lettering is what really kind of cements it all together and provides that immersive feeling. Because nothing takes me out of a comic more than the lettering that's just awful. And I mean, I hate to say it like that because people are trying their hardest, and I know. But it's important to, and I've had to do this too, to go in there and study some of your favorite comics, study some of your favorite letterers, get comfortable with the idea of this is part of the art. This is part of the story. This is something that needs to be conveyed properly, because otherwise, if you're not doing it, it's going to pull the reader right out. And so when you're having and making these choices, and that's the thing too, as you study a lot of the people who have done this stuff so well and the things that you've enjoyed over the years. I don't just mean you, but anyone who's creating, anyone who's reading comics, you start to it becomes second nature, like anything else. It's the same thing that you, like how an artist, someone can watch them draw and you're like, how you drawing that so fast out of nowhere, right out of your mind? Because I did it 10,000 other times before. It's like a muscle memory sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm stacking on top of that. The choices that you took before that didn't work, or maybe the ones that worked in certain ways, right?
Yep.
And you're like, oh, I know how to hit that note as like a singer. Like you're like, oh, I know how to create this feeling, I agree.
Yeah,
and I think that
you're aware of how to all of a sudden you're leading the eye within the panels and the composition. It works with the composition. Sometimes it really elevates even the composition because it works so well, and it feels like the page is actually finished, an actual finished piece. Where sometimes there's pages that come in and you look at it and you go, this feels really empty, but you got to think, okay, I got to put the lettering on there, and it starts to tie it all together. And it's the same kind of thing going on here.
I think you said it best, is that lettering and graphic design can get underestimated, but like you're saying, think about how much time you spend reading what's in a bubble or looking at a graphic, and really, unfortunately, sometimes I talk to some people who are like, oh, I don't sometimes even really pay attention to the art on a page when I'm following the balloons and the stories going. I'm just kind of flipping through, which is kind of sad, but because the artist made a huge contribution, but it's that the words guide you. So like this comment here that came in, it's like, if you've got painful lettering, or you have all the I's, the wrong capital I, you know what I mean, throughout your book, and it's clunky, it's just like bad art. It's the same thing, and it can undermine what you're doing. But yeah, so I think that's the first thing that, there's a technical side of it. Like, if you want to letter your own books, here's the good news. You can get pretty good at it in under a year, unlike art, which you might need 10 years to get good at, right? So you can get good at it. You can get technically proficient. So you're no longer like, how do I make this thing do that thing? And now you can start to get more in the choice land of like, what choice do I make versus like, how do I technically do something, right?
Totally. Yep.
So there's always that first step in any craft, like crossing that initial technical threshold where you're not like, where is the stroke key, right? You know what I mean? And then, I think but as you, like you're saying, Peter, like as you cross that line, as you technically get out of the way, you now start to look at a page and you start to see, like you just said, like, how does the design feel, right? Like, I'm over here reading this first bubble in the panel, and then I go straight down to this worm, right? And where she mentions her children, which are right underneath that balloon. So it takes you, it takes you from here, takes you right down to where, okay, there's the children, which might be kind of hard to see at a quick glance, because of the black and white nature of that. And then boom, you're right down here to his reaction to what this thing is, right? And then boom, it takes you back over here left to right to take you through the action of that last panel. Because it's like those kind of three pieces, don't you think, Peter? It's like, how do you lead people through the page? 2, how do you create nuance and character sounds with the bubbles and font choices, etc.?
I got to tell you, the first balloon you got there with holy shit, right?
Yep.
Okay, so can you zoom in to the top left there? Because I want to comment on something that,
please,
and just appreciate for a second, and just put right in there. We're gonna start the new year with a bang.
Oh, change it.
Okay, yeah. So right there. Okay. So are you able to move it over a little bit so we can see the corners of the panel there?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm sharing this thing, so it's kind of a little funky here.
All right.
Like that?
Yeah. Okay, so I really like how you have this spatial equidistance going with the balloon edges to the panel. So that's great with the placement, and then you got the tail. And if you zoom out a little bit, so we see a little bit more of it, I like how the tail almost feels like it goes into the crevice of where the shirt meets with the arm.
Right.
And it's like little things like that because it has like a push and pull with the art. It's not fighting. You're not putting the balloon, the tail pointing where it shouldn't really point, wouldn't make any sense. And you're also not overlapping. You're not doing that with the art. And then you're also not putting it in a spot where then the bicep and the out part of like maybe the forearm even are coming out and creating a bulge. It's going right there, and it works and fits with the art. And it's little subtle things like that. Like you can know the technical aspect of how to letter it and everything else, but it's like little subtle artistic choices like that to make it work within the composition. And I'll notice that stuff when I'm doing my own stuff, but also when I'm reading other books as well. And I appreciate that when that happens.
Well, no, I know it's what makes it feel like you're saying. It's like if this was here, you'd be bugged.
Yeah.
Right? You'd be bugged, and you didn't even know why. You were just like, why is this here? Like, all the lines are a mess now, right? Instead of being able to say just like, we place it here, it creates equal distance, it fills the space, your eye gently goes to it, right? And then you look back at the page, and in the broad scope of the page, it carries the right amount of weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's these things that it seems like it's difficult to grasp at first. But the more you see it, the more you do it, like anything else, you get more proficient at it, and it becomes second nature. And I know there's a lot of people out there that get intimidated by lettering their own books, or they don't know where to begin when it comes to critiquing why is the lettering working, why isn't it working. But first and foremost, the whole point of lettering with your comic is to provide clarity and to provide direction. Yeah. So everything about it is going to guide and frame the panels, the composition, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. So just understanding that and the placement in which how that works, and not like what Brian says, the tail should be covering the art and be almost touching the mouth. Kidding.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I've seen
yes.
I've seen boatloads of comic art that do that, especially over the years, seeing submissions come through, or sometimes the tail will point to parts that don't make any sense. Things like that. So it's, or when there's like a football balloon shape, and all like the lettering is just like just squashed in there, instead of maybe just using a separate, like 2 bubbles and putting it through. There's all kinds of different choices like that I see don't get made, and that's the stuff that makes it stand out. and you go, wow, like, this really needs to be looked at again. This needs someone with
Yeah.
with an editing eye to come through and understand what needs to get corrected.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, because I think that there's also, this is for a book I'm doing with Maxie called Blood Moon Stomp. It's a different book, but you can tell I like this style of art, right? That's traditionally done. It's smudgy, it's etc. But I was working on, with Billy, this title for it, right? And because it's also, I think, part of that design weight as well too, like the design of it, just not only the lettering, but like this title design, like, this is essentially the wrestler meets The Shining in its story, right? It's a wrestler, a has-been wrestler who goes to this house, essentially this abandoned house, to go drink himself to death, only to discover that the house is actually a haunted house of evil, and it actually had summoned him there for a different purpose, right?
Well, that sounds cool, man. Yeah,
No,
I dig
thank you.
that.
Yeah.
Hold on. Brian is asking, is the Exiled trade going to bookstores? And also Eric wants to know, is it too late to get the Exiled?
It is. If you guys hit me up in DM, I will get you guys, because you guys have been the loyal and the best. So the book is done. These are the advanced copies that got sent airmail to me. So if you can imagine, here's the scope of these bad boys. I'll stop sharing so you can see like how big. This is traditional comic. This is the size of the Exiled, the crowdfunded edition, right? It's got a ribbon. It's these beautiful, huge pages that get really immersive. And so these books, if somebody missed the campaign, hit me up. This is the Indiegogo cover. There was also, this is the Kickstarter edition. Hit me up and I'll make sure you get one. They're on the boat coming back to the States. They go out in February. Excuse me. That was, I lettered that whole book as well too. It was quite a fight to get this thing done. It's 136 pages and then a 40-page additional story. But it's, yeah, so this version actually won't ever go to bookstores. This is it. This is just for the backers.
That's a backer exclusive. Wow,
Backer
okay.
exclusive, yep. This size, this cover, Rob Willis did it. This is backer exclusive. And so, which is cool because the comic itself sold 100,000 copies of single issues. So if you're one of the guys who got these, this has probably some meaning because it made it out. I shouldn't say the other ones don't, but it hopefully has a little more meaning because the pool of people who might be interested in it are bigger. But yeah, this worked out good. This worked out. It's cool, and so you should definitely get it. It's not as cool as King Cryptid, but it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you, Adam.
Because I love what you did with King Cryptid. Anybody who hasn't read that, you should, because it's also a pretty good masterclass in lettering. Because Peter, if you don't know, he does these really remarkable things where he opens the book where the box, like maybe a caption is, and it's not a dialogue, but either a thought or a narrative voiceover, and he creates like an artistic shape, so it becomes almost maybe like a bit of a mountain or something that really, yeah. So he does these bits, but you did it. What was it? Issue maybe 4 or something. I love that behemoth there. That how you did that. That was great. What a excellent choice to make it. Like in the moon. But where you'll take and you'll shape a box to be like, you did one that was like a cliff face. That really sets the feeling of it.
Oh, I wonder if you might be referring to the last caption box at the end. I don't know if anybody caught that. I haven't had anybody comment on it, but it's the last box there. It's the profile of the Old Man of the Mountain, which is a New Hampshire landmark. And yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot to those boxes, that you built, that there's a texture to them. Like, and a lot of times a pretty good technique, if you're not feeling like you're an artist, one thing you can do is you can take a piece of art and trace that piece of art for a box or for a thing, and then work with that tracing of that and fudge around a bit to create interesting dialogue boxes. If you don't feel like maybe you have the hand skill to do it, you can trace some things. And I don't mean steal in the sense of like, you're taking boxes and shapes. It's not like you're, stealing an image. Though, speaking of stealing the image, I have a funny story. Did the opening credits for Mad Men back in the day over at at a company, I won't say the name. And one of the artists on there, the image of the guy holding the cigarette, he's got the arm out and he's holding the cigarette, and it's supposed to be Don Draper, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, one of the artists in house there turned that image in. We built the credits, the whole thing. And lo and behold, guess what? He stole that image from another artist. And they didn't find out later till that artist sued and, of course, won. Because it turns out it was somebody else's piece of artwork. So don't trace like that, for the record.
Get inspired to create.
Yeah, and
there's a difference. It's subtle, but there's a difference.
Don't do that. Don't plagiarize your PhD. Though sometimes you can become the president of a university. But I'm just saying, so be careful about that part of it. But there is some nice things, getting some shapes, particularly from photos and other things in nature, and tracing shapes. That's one way I was able to build a lot of lettering in pieces, is you trace real shapes that you can then sort of manipulate a little bit digitally to give you interesting dialogue boxes, caption boxes, sound effects as well.
Something that I do as well, and I did it a lot on this page. I really like to toot my own horn here. I like the lettering I did here.
I loved that.
With Behemoth and Victor Lugo. And Victor Lugo is basically, there's different, it's autofocus isn't going to cooperate today, but there's different sizing within the font, different spacings, different little things, because he's getting choked and he's trying to get words out, and he's also injured, so he can't really breathe. So in the middle of it, he's coughing, he's gasping, he's doing all these various things. And what I did a lot with the lettering, and I do it on the whole series, is I'll put the words out, but then I start eating away at the balloon itself, and then chipping to make it have enough space, of course, to make it still readable, but give it character, and then go around and work within the confines of it, as opposed to like everything's like a circle, oval, etc., etc.
No, that's nice. I remember that page very well, because that was one of the years that I loved the way that felt. And also, too, there's quite a bit of dialogue in the way you moved it across that other panel so that it didn't crowd the plate too much.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it created that exasperated feeling, which I think is a big part of lettering, is like you're trying to show what this would sound like, as weird as that is, right?
Yeah.
Like, you try to use a visual medium to inspire what people would be hearing. And it's cool. It's a cool craft, and that was a great example of it, with like nuanced things that people might not even be able to put their finger on.
And it takes time. I mean, man, looking at, and I have a graphic design degree, but when I was doing my first book, lettering it, I was trying to reinvent the wheel like a jackass 22-year-old. And,
as you should be, right?
And I'm like, I'll do it different. It'll look so cool, right? Look like crap. Look like absolute crap. But at the time, I was like, it looks like something I haven't seen before. Yeah, because usually they try not to proliferate the world with crap. I mean, this was, 17 years ago, 18, 19 or so years ago. So it's different. But at that point in time, when I was doing it, and then I look back even just maybe 4 or 5 years later, I was like, what am I doing? Just get to basics. It's done a certain way. You can push and pull and bend the rules a bit, but you can't break the rules, light them on fire, dump them in the alley behind the back, and then go, oh yeah, this is great. What do you mean you don't like it? You can't do that. So you can kind of twist and bend and manipulate, but you can't absolutely destroy and then expect people or even yourself later on to look at it and go, yeah, I'm proud of that. That was pretty good.
Or even though for people though, and if you're going to break them, boy, it needs to be a narrative reason that pushes the break, right? Like one of the things I love, think about the old Matrix movie, how when they were in the real world, there was this green hue to everyone. Which normally, that's like bad news. Who wants green tones in skin? Like, that's like a 101. Hi, we have a lot of green in people's skin tone. People be like, dude, get this guy out of this room, like this guy is fired. But they packed all these green tones into people's skin. Green coloring in a grit skin tone is like, what the hell are you thinking? But because of the narrative idea that they were in like this computer world, that they were in the Matrix, that narrative reached across what would be normally a rule, and it broke it in a special way, right? Like
and then you see tons of people aped it afterwards, but weren't doing the narrative play on it. It looked bad.
That's right. It's why,
because they didn't get why it worked.
That's right. They thought it just worked because of that's the style. It's not. It's because those directors, the Wachowski brothers at the time, had a really clear vision. It's like why Bullet Time was so profound, and why when other people do it, it's not, because it was baked into their narrative, and it changes things when you can break a rule based on a narrative. And I think that's like you're saying, Peter, like that's when you're like you're saying is the young 20-year-old, same thing me too, like young 20-year-old filmmaker making terrible choices, thinking you're redefining the genre when really you're just looking like an amateur, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But maybe I'll finish up, Peter, on this this cover for Blood Moon Stomp.
Yeah. Let's go back to that. Let me bring that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're thinking about, I'm trying to think this through here. Like, this is one of the covers, but this title has to live not only just on this cover, but a lot of covers to come, and hopefully lots of volumes to come. But so these are kind of these different sort of takes, right? That, and there are some good thoughts behind them, but they just didn't land until C, right there. At least for myself. And then C, we're going to swap out, instead of it being her in there, which is one of the monsters, it's the mask. It's his wrestling mask that's hidden behind the letters, because that's actually what kind of gives him some powers in the end in this story. And so the mask, like at the end of this story, he passes it to someone else. It becomes like the narrative. But because once again, it was trying to figure out like what are the feelings, and also too because the shape is nice and convenient as that sort of square, tilted on its axis.
Yeah, it's easy to read. It's bold. It stands out. I like that one the best too, honestly. So
okay, well that was good. That was another reason for me coming on here, Peter. I needed your editorial insight.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I had to, I would have been like, if you could do something to manipulate with like D, but like to me, it looks like you did. Like you manipulated D and got C out of it.
Right.
And that's. I think that's the winner. Yeah,
I think so too. It really, that's our story, and like, so I think that's part of the process. I think is
is okay over there.
Oh yeah, no, it's my little guy over there. Hold on one sec.
Sounds like a pretty big little guy. Speaking of Blood Moon Stomp. Ooh. Dr. Mask, any advice for someone creating their own logo? Use existing fonts. I know some free, some are not. I always start off in that respect, but then design it. You can vectorize it, then push and pull, cut away, add, etc., build upon it. So that's kind of how I always start off with it, if I'm not starting off 100% not within the realm of using a font. But there's so many amazing fonts out there. But yeah, just make sure you got your permissions. Hello, was that you, little guy?
Yeah, Oliver wanted to say hello to Peter.
Little big guy.
Yeah, he said, hey, Dad, I got to meet your friend.
What's your name, buddy?
This is Ollie.
Ollie? Hey, Ollie.
He's saying hello to you. I know you can't hear because I got the
Oh, well, that makes total sense.
Yeah. He's saying hello. But, yeah, I think these are... Yeah. He's pulling me away. He says, Dad, it's time. It's come to the end. But I love this stream, Peter. I love talking about this because I feel like it's this huge part of the higher level of comic book creation that can get overlooked.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to... He's a tough customer. I don't want to keep you too long. Yeah, Doc. Using Photoshop, you could use Illustrator, that kind of thing. Um, I believe. What programs do you use, Adam?
I'm in Clip Studio as my number one. I feel like it has the best range of what you can do, and it's only $50 one time, so you can't really.
Yeah, I
You
use
can't.
like a old like CS something or other that I can actually own.
Yeah,
CS6. That's what I'm using.
yeah. I have the Adobe Suite as well too because I use InDesign and Photoshop. But really, Clip. If you just wanted to pick one, pound for pound, I feel like it. Eric Weathers would disagree with me. He likes Illustrator. I I like Clip.
It's like madness over there. Adam, I'm gonna let you go. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
want him
begun.
to. I don't want him to tear apart the house on you.
All right, excellent. Well, Peter, dude, I love doing the streams. I love talking comics, and this is great. And guys, everybody in the chat, you're awesome for hanging out with us. And you should definitely, Jawbone Death is coming. You saw some pages for it. It's coming in the end of January, so I'll be tweeting it out like crazy.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to stay on for a minute or two to answer some questions in the chat that were directed just about this topic, and I'll let you guys go.
Awesome, brother. Thank you. Everybody have an awesome night.
All right, man. Take it easy. All right, so let's see. There was a question here going back. This was from Spicer McLeroy. I had starred this to answer later on. How many rounds of art passes do you usually expect from a comic artist? The ones that I work with, honestly, it's 2 or 3, usually, at the max. It doesn't really take longer than 2 or 3 takes, and not on the entire comic. Usually just maybe a handful of pages, if that, to get it right. But some people I know, some people, man, they and it really depends who you work with. It depends what the story's about. It depends if what's being specified by usually the writer within the scene structure, within the story, if they're being clear with the artist. And then it also sometimes depends if, even if they are being clear, is the artist understanding it? Are they interpreting it correctly? Are they, because there's a lot of open to interpretation kinds of things that can occur within any aspect of creating something with someone else. So it depends how much are you willing to kind of give and take. How much does something know it has to look that specific way to convey this point? How much of that it depends upon, obviously, the story. But usually for me, personally, 2 to 3. 2 to 3 in terms of it goes thumbnails, then pencils, then inks, then final. Some artists I work with, if I'm really comfortable with them, if they know what I want, and we've worked together a lot, it'll be thumbnails, then maybe inks, and then we can go on to colors and things like that. But it also depends how they work. If they're working more traditional, then every step of the way. If they're working more digital, but the thumbnail process was either traditional or even just loosely digital, then they're able to go back and edit and revise quickly. So a lot of different factors in there. So I wish I had more of a concise answer for you, but that's just my experience. Also, let me see here. Okay, so I already answered this one. I personally use Photoshop and Illustrator when it comes to lettering. King Cryptid, I think I predominantly used outside of logo, outside of developing the logo, the title, the masthead on that respect, just Photoshop. And then making sure things are vector as opposed to raster. Raster is going to pixelize some stuff. It's not going to be as clear as it should be. Vector is going to maintain the integrity of those shapes, of the font especially, which is important. Let's see. And vector also, you can increase, decrease size, and it maintains it the whole time. Whereas raster, it might look good at a certain resolution, a certain size, but the more you increase it, especially, it's going to get really blown out, pixelized all over the place. Pixelated, pixelized. I call it all kinds of things. Thank you, Shrek, for watching and appreciate it. AAL, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Let's see. Dr. Mask asks, how about covers for art passes? Generally, I tell the artist who's going to do a cover give me 3 or 4 ideas, real loose thumbnail stuff, just placement, composition, that kind of thing, and then we develop one. Once we develop it, again, it's the same process. It goes to pencils, inks, and then finish it up. So that's usually not too much of a harrowing experience. I don't do like 2 or 3 or 4 versions of the pages, so it's not the same kind of process when it comes to that. It's more with the cover. It's a little bit more of like, let's see a bunch of ideas. I'll have ideas in terms of the scene and what's going to be played out, and then they'll come up with something based on that, and sometimes even throw something in there that's just like a total oddball sort of thing. And sometimes that works, and sometimes that one doesn't get used, but they'll put it in there sometimes anyway. And then sometimes there's artists that come along, like Christian Rossi with this cover. This was supposed to be just a promo image, and then he sends me this whole thing, and I'm like, this can't just be a promo image. So we made it the cover. And then even Kier did the same thing with issue 4, which is, that one. And he was just messing around, having fun, doing a scene where King Cryptid encounters Broog. And I was like, that's got to be the cover. That looks incredible. The craziest thing that Kier ever did was he did a double-page spread in issue 4. And I didn't send him the script yet. He was just having fun. And I was like, that's literally going to be a scene that I was going to write out. So let's just use that. It was great. And it's the double-page spread that's in issue 4. So sometimes it works out nice. Sometimes, you get something and the artists are just either messing around, having fun, and they deliver a professional piece, and you can use that. Sometimes, it's coming up with the conception of something to put across a different point of the issue, and then you let them know, and then they build from there. So, yeah, it's stuff like that. But, no problem. But, yeah, as far as the graphic design stuff goes, if anyone's got questions, I did a video, I think it was actually the time that Adam couldn't show up. And I ended up doing a whole video anyway, talking about graphic design, breaking things down, about like layout and logo and font and lettering and all that. So if anyone wants to go reference that, it's probably maybe from a month or 2 ago. I forget at this point. So many episodes ago, but it's on here. It's within the channel's video section. So you guys can go take a deep dive into that if you want a refresher course or anything along those lines. But it was great having Adam on tonight, and thank you guys so much for being here too. Really appreciate your comments, your questions, all that good stuff. Hope everybody's having a great new year so far. Beampad says, will you add a fan art page? We do have fan art pages in the Mail to the King section. So we got a letters page where people write to King Cryptid, Mail to the King. And that's at the end of the book, of course. And so King Cryptid will respond to the letters from the readers. And then also we'll put out fan art. And each issue usually has like 2 pieces of fan art and a couple of questions answered. So yeah, go for it. If you want to send something in, feel free. You can email contact@alternacomics.com for that. Other than that, go check out King Cryptid. Speaking of, go to kingcryptid.com. Issues 5 to 9 are funding. You don't have to just start at issue 1. Now, I'm showing issue 1, but every single issue in King Cryptid, it's an ongoing series, is self-contained, and the continuity ties together. So if you stayed with us from number 1, you're rewarded for that. You get more depth, more context, more world building, more character building, different things that tie together. You see them unfold. Now, if you jump on at issue 5, if you jump on at issue 25, it doesn't matter. You're never going to feel lost. You're always going to understand the characters, the situation at hand, and what's going on. Sometimes things will be referenced that will talk about things that occurred in a past issue. We'll have an editor's note for that. And an editor's note is something also, it used to be used more prevalently in comics, that there'd be like a little asterisk. I think there's already one in one of these issues. A little asterisk, and then at the bottom it says see, whatever issue for, more information, that kind of a thing. And then you can go, let's say they're talking about something that happened in issue 2 and you're reading issue 6. So then you can go to issue 2 if you want more context, and to really see what happened, how the event played out, and you can read that issue. But you don't need to have read that issue. You don't need to know about that story. It is not told in a linear fashion. We've got flashback issues. We've got issues that run concurrently as other issues and other events play out. We'll get into more of that as the series goes on. So at any point in time, you can jump into King Cryptid. You'll never feel lost. You'll never feel out of sorts. Think of it in terms of storytelling style. Comics did this for the longest time. They don't really do it as much anymore. But you can think of it as like a, if you've ever seen any episodic television series or animated series, you could kind of jump in at any point in like Batman the Animated Series and not really feel lost as far as what's happening. Now, if you get into a part two of, part two of two, you're going to miss out on what happened in part one. But there's none of that in King Cryptid, because if we have a bigger story, we just make the issue bigger. So issue 10 is going to be the first example of that. I was going to have it split up into 3 parts, and instead we're going to condense it, make one big, giant, king-sized issue 10. So every single issue is a self-contained story. But the continuity is there, what happens in the story matters, and it plays out and affects the characters and has ramifications upon the future. But every story is a complete story. All right, so thank you guys again for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Tomorrow I'm going to be on the Alterna channel. It is our 18th birthday. Alterna turns 18 tomorrow. So I'm going to be talking about a few things of what's to come, what's going on. Alterna's site as well. I'm kind of actually doing a little bit of, not remodeling, but I got a couple of things going on that are making things a bit easier for me in terms of organization and things like that too. That's not really stuff I'm going to talk about tomorrow, but just in case anybody noticed, usually I got like more short boxes and stuff in the corner. I'm going to be talking to tomorrow again on the Alterna channel at 9 o'clock Eastern. Just talking a bit about also what's coming up with January 20th. We've got a new crowdfunder, a new campaign launching with 4 new comics. And then also I have to talk to you guys about the way the website is going to start to be designed and laid out. It's going to be categorized more about the titles, the books that are here, with a focus on those, as opposed to the way it currently is. So like you can click like King Cryptid, everything King Cryptid, Blood Realm, everything Blood Realm, Horace H. Hoover, everything Horace H. Hoover, books, merch, etc. So, and then there's also going to be past series, things like that. But I'll have most of that laid out tomorrow. If I don't finish the entire site remodel tomorrow, I'll explain a little bit of what's to come. But yeah, so tomorrow Alterna turns 18. Yeah, I know. It's where's the time go, right? Where's the time go? JW, what's up, JW Learning says, damn, I missed most of the show. Well, we're wrapping up. I'm sorry, but you can watch the replay. It was pretty good. Yan Zhao, how's it going, Yan Zhao? And yeah, see Comic Book Radio episode 115. That's the graphic design. There's a little editor's note for you. Although this is a chat's note for Metatron's Cube. So you can see that episode number for that episode about graphic design. I think it was a bunch of different things I had discussed on that episode. Will Alterna register to vote? It's old enough to do, it's Alterna turns legal tomorrow. 18. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you for your questions, your comments, all that good stuff. Hope everybody's having a great new year. And see you guys hopefully tomorrow night on the Alterna channel. If not, I'll be back Sunday night on here, 9 o'clock Eastern, with Mike Smith, talking about 3D printing. And that's the dude that does all the 3D printing for us. He's already got the King Cryptid 3D resin figure. He's going to be working on the Behemoth one, and more to come very, very soon. I'll get to pick his brain about that, and maybe you guys will too. So hopefully I'll see you then either tomorrow night or Sunday night. Either way, thanks so much for being here. Everybody have a great night and an even better tomorrow. See you guys soon. Take it easy.